derive cotangent. Okay, so here I'm going to switch over into a different color again. Maybe I'll go with green just to be green. Okay, so the derivative of cotangent, so we'll just start simply if we had cotangent of x over 2. Remember, cotangent is the same thing as cosine of x over 2 divided by sine of x over 2. Okay? From here, we could do the derivative of this by using the quotient rule. I know a lot of you don't feel good about the quotient rule because it does become quite messy. An easy tip, when you're instead of dealing with the quotient rule, you could do the product rule. Just do cosine of x over 2 times the sine of x over 2 raised to the negative 1. And so now you could just do the product rule. It'll be a little bit easier to deal with later maybe. So anyway, so we could do the product rule. Derivative of the first one, derivative of cosine is negative sine. So it would be negative sine of x over 2. And remember, we also have to take the derivative of x over 2, which is just going to be 1/2, because remember, x over 2 is the same thing as 1/2 times x. Okay, so there were a lot of questions about this today. I found myself answering that a lot. So anyways, back to this. Negative sine x over 2 times 1/2. Okay, and that's times the original function that we had there, which was sine of x over 2 raised to the negative 1. And then we have plus the original function, the original first function, which is we don't differentiate it, cosine x over 2 times the derivative of the second function. Now this is going to be negative 1, because remember the chain rule, negative 1 times, oh darn, I already messed up. Let's see. Alrighty. So sorry, here we are. Cosine of x over 2. Take the derivative of sine of x over 2 to the negative 1. It's going to be times negative 1, because that, comes out to the front, times sine of x over 2. Sorry, my wife's watching White Collar on the computer, so she might laugh randomly. It's not at me, because, this stuff really isn't funny. So negative 1 times sine of x over 2 raised to the negative 2 times the derivative of what is inside, and that would be times 1/2 times cosine of x over 2. Okay, if you're not sure where this 1/2 came from, remember earlier when we took the sine of x over 2, it's the same thing as taking the derivative of, let's try a different color again. Want to be thorough. So the derivative of sine of x over 2 is going to be the same thing as the derivative of sine of what we would normally do with x, which is cosine of what we have, x over 2. And remember, the derivative of x over 2 is just going to be 1/2. So that's where that comes from. So 1/2 times cosine of x over 2. Okay? So here we are. Now we could start combining stuff if we want to. So remember, this ends up becoming a denominator. Okay? So we have, if I rewrote it, it would be negative sine x over 2 or sorry, negative 1/2 sine x over 2, this part right here, divided by sine of x over 2. I should really have parentheses around those. Okay. Now you could notice right away sine of x over 2 divided by sine of x over 2 is just going to end up becoming 1. So we're left with the negative 1/2 here. Plus, and here we have, this one's a little bit longer, cosine of x over 2 times, remember, the negative sine of x over 2 to the negative second power times 1/2 times cosine of x over 2. So that's quite a mouthful. So let's put this into a fractional form, and you'll notice something kind of pops out right here. It may pop out to you, we'll see. So cosine of x over 2 divided by negative sine, see, there she goes again, of x over 2. Oh gosh, that looks like a mess. Where was I? Oh yeah, squared and then remember it was times 1/2 cosine of x over 2. Okay, so we have two cosines of x over 2's, so this ends up equaling negative 1/2 plus, remember, so this, darn it, another color. Let's see what haven't I read. So this part right here, I'm going to do up over here. So we have cosine of x over 2 times cosine of x over 2 is just cosine of x over 2 squared, okay, times 1/2. Because it's just cosine of x over 2 times cosine of x over 2 is cosine squared. So it's plus 1/2 times cosine of x over 2, and it's squared, divided by negative sine squared x over 2. Okay? Now, so remember, cosine over sine is cotangent. So this becomes negative 1/2. And then, remember, we still have that negative here, and we still have that 1/2. So it's minus 1/2 times, and then this part, which is cotangent squared of x over 2. So, there it is. And, you could go further. We could factor out the 1/2. So, or a negative 1/2. So it equals negative 1/2. I don't know why that popped up. Ink can be enabled. Would you like to open the ink? Nope. Okay, so undistributed negative 1/2. It becomes 1 plus cotangent squared of x over 2. Okay. All right, so there we go. And we'll talk a little bit more about, what does this mean, when we differentiate that tomorrow. So it might sink in a little bit more. So you're kind of in the process of discovering, given these derivatives, we're kind of discovering what the derivative of cosecant would be.